Da hat man im Grunde genommen mit Alexander von Humboldt noch dieses ganzheitliche Denken auch geprägt. Einem war klar, und wenn ich von einem rede, meine ich jetzt mal auch die große Zeit von Niels Bohr, von Heisenberg, Schrödinger,
ja.
Die große Familie.
Genau.
Ja, da haben wir natürlich auch den Albert Einstein dabei. Und die haben erkannt, dass das Ganze schon ein ganzheitliches Konzept ist. Dass es im Grunde genommen Materie noch nicht mal richtig gibt, wie auch Hans-Peter Dürr und auch letztlich Heisenberg gesagt hat. Schrödinger, Materie fällt sich so, als ob, wiederholt das, als ob sie substanzielle Dauerwesen wären. So, worüber reden wir hier? Ja? Also das ist ein in erster Linie geistiger Prozess.
Ja. Wunderbar. Ich sehe schon, wir fliegen durch die Themen. Ich finde es so großartig mit dir. Ich denke gerade an die Renaissance, wo ja auch wieder versucht wird, altes platonisches Wissen, neue Erkenntnisse zu einer Gesamtsicht auf die Welt zu kreieren. Da waren wahrscheinlich viele ähnliche Seelen inkarniert, wie sie dann wieder kamen und kommen. Aber lass uns den Polsprung nochmal ansehen. Du hast gesagt, der Pol wandert im Moment und zwar schneller als bisher. Auch Amundsen hat schon darauf hingewiesen. Und jetzt ist es wird aber sozusagen offiziell nicht so wirklich bekannt gegeben, dass diese Wanderung sogar noch zugenommen hat. Ja? Habe ich das richtig verstanden und woran könnte das liegen?
Da muss man, vielleicht noch einen kleinen Schritt zurück.
Ja, gerne.
Einen kleinen Schritt zurück. Es ist schon
ich habe wieder 3 Fragen auf einmal gestellt, entschuldige.
Ja, aber ich denke mal, vielleicht sollten wir doch von vornherein klären, wo kommt denn überhaupt wo kommen denn die Magnetfelder überhaupt her? Ja? Also nicht nur die Ausrichtung Nord-Süd, sondern wo ist das Magnetfeld, was wir ja kennen, ja? Überhaupt verortet. Und da weiß man heute relativ genau, ganz direkte Messungen kann man zum Erdkern nicht machen, aber dass der Erdkern dort verantwortlich ist, dass es sich um einen Plasmazustand handelt, mit einer hohen Energie, mit einer hohen Temperatur. Da ist dann alles im Magmazustand flüssig eben. Und da eben, weil es mit großen Eisenmengen noch zu tun hat, ich mache es mal sehr einfach jetzt, auch tatsächlich, wie wir wissen, ja auch Eisen magnetisiert ist und durch Bewegung dann auch noch sogar Induktionen entstehen. Also wir haben es mit einem rotierenden Kern zu tun, der die Erdmagnetfelder generiert. Und aber auch die Ausrichtung, weil die Rotationsrichtung relativ klar ist auch sozusagen die Ausrichtung klar. Die Erdmagnetfelder zum einen, die ja statisch sind, ja, die wechseln sich nicht ab, aber wenn sozusagen sich in eine andere Richtung tatsächlich ja der Erdkern dreht, dann haben wir natürlich auch dann die Veränderung der Polausrichtung, wenn sich die ganze Achsenlage verändert, vom inneren Kern her. Und wenn man das einmal so versteht, dann hat man eigentlich 2 Dinge verstanden. Einmal, dass das Erdmagnetfeld, das lebenswichtig ist, ohne dass wir überhaupt keine Erinnerungsfähigkeiten hier hätten. Wir würden hier gar nicht inkarnieren können, wenn das Erdmagnetfeld nicht da wäre. Wir brauchen das.
Weil da all unsere Gedanken gespeichert sind?
Unter anderem tatsächlich, in Verbindung mit den Ozeanen, mit den Meeren. Ja, denn wir dürfen nicht vergessen, wir bestehen ja selber aus den Grundatomen, wie eben auch zum Großteil eben auch die Erde besteht. Die Erde ist deswegen auch ein lebendiger Organ, wenn man es mal lebendig anders definiert, als wir es gerade tun. Ja? Also tatsächlich ist es so, wir senden selber ja Magnetfelder aus, sehr schwache, die man aber messen kann. Ja, also es gibt Messinstrumente, die könnten jetzt von der Entfernung, die ich jetzt so halte, Kamera mal so gesehen, tatsächlich 1 Meter, könnten sie die Magnetfelder von deinem Körper messen. Die sind örtlich leicht unterschiedlich von der Intensität her, aber ein statisches Magnetfeld verändert maximal eben die Intensität, aber nicht die Frequenzen. Ein statisches Feld hat keine Frequenzen. So, darüber reden wir, wenn wir über den Polsprung reden. Und wenn die Magnetfeldintensitäten sich abschwächen und das sogar noch an Rasanz zugenommen hat, dann korreliert das will ich damit eigentlich nur sagen, auch mit der Rotationsgeschwindigkeit. So sieht das jedenfalls aus. Und ganz offenbar gibt es auch gerade eben neuere Veröffentlichungen dazu, dass das wohl der Fall ist. Ja, also da bin ich sehr vorsichtig. Es gibt Wissenschaftler, die sagen, und die in relativ konservativen, für mich sehr konservativen Fachzeitschriften das veröffentlicht haben, gesagt, das ist so. Teilweise soll der Erdmagnetkern sogar schon stillgestanden haben. Ja. Das sei auch gar nicht mal so außergewöhnlich, hat es auch schon ein paar Mal gegeben. Aber da ist noch eine gewisse Unsicherheit. Deswegen will ich das auch mit Vorsicht genießen. Fakt ist nur, die Magnetfelder kommen irgendwo her, die Polrichtung verändert sich auch. Die kommen irgendwo her und kommen aus der Mitte der Erde. Was auch immer sich da genau abspielt, ist, glaube ich, jetzt gar nicht mal so wichtig. Aber wir haben es mit Magnetfeldern zu tun. Und die Magnetfelder sind das elementarste Agens, Wirkstoff, wenn man so will, das überhaupt Leben ist ermöglicht. Ja, und da haben wir es wieder. Also auch da wieder der Punkt, wenn sich die Polrichtung ändert, die dann irgendwann zum totalen Sprung führt, ja, dann verändert sich auch unser Bewusstseinswandel automatisch damit. Und das Wunderbarste, Thomas, ist, das sind die neueren Erkenntnisse, die ich schon lange im Auge habe, aber die noch nicht spruchreif waren, aus meiner Sicht spruchreif waren. Aber mir liegen jetzt tatsächlich Informationen vor, Studien vor, die doch relativ klar verdeutlichen, die Wechselwirkung zwischen dem Bewusstsein im Kollektiv von Menschen und der Wanderung, der Geschwindigkeit, sozusagen wahrscheinlich auch des Kerns. Den lassen wir mal außen vor, weil man da nicht hingucken kann. Aber hingucken kann man tatsächlich die Polwanderungsgeschwindigkeit. Ja? Und die hat sich erheblich verändert. Ja? Und zwar zum Erstaunen der Geophysiker. Wir haben keine Erklärung, wieso das auf einmal so mit einer solchen rasant zugenommen hat. Denn das Schönste daran, was passiert ist, warum ich auch so nicht so weit aus dem Fenster lehne jetzt und sage, dass es da ganz offensichtliche Korrelationen gibt zwischen den Magnetfeldernveränderungen und unserem kollektiven Bewusstsein, ist nämlich, dass es zwei Messphasen gegeben hat. Ja, über viele Jahrhunderte kann man sehen, dass es ein relativ linearer Verlauf ist der Polwanderung, der Veränderung des Winkels. Und plötzlich geht das in einen exponentiellen Verlauf über. Ja, also so ungefähr wird das aussehen. Ich würde gerne die Grafik mal einblenden. Das macht eine ganze Menge Sinn, weil mehr als 1000 Worte. Ja, und wenn wir uns das anschauen, dann sehen wir, es geht steil nach oben und dann plötzlich hält es an und geht sogar ein Stück zurück. Und das ist vor ein paar Monaten wieder passiert. So, und da gibt es dann, wenn man noch ein paar andere Daten hinzuholt, Korrelationen zwischen dem, wo man sagen kann, dass der Polsprung mit unserem Bewusstseinswandel zu tun hat, ist für mich eindeutig so. Ja? Aber dass wir tatsächlich in der Lage sind, nachweislich in der Lage sind, diesen Prozess aufzuhalten, das ist spannend und darüber sollten wir, glaube ich, auch noch mal ein bisschen nachlegen.
Das ist sehr spannend. Ja, wenn ich mich richtig erinnere, es gab ja 2011 einen weltweit sehr wichtigen Kongress, wo schon darüber berichtet wurde. Jetzt in Kürze stehen Kataklysmen bevor und großer Wandel. Und dann ist es erstmal nicht dazu gekommen, dann ging es wieder runter, wie du schon erzählt hast. Und da kann man jetzt überlegen, ist das von der anderen Seite bewusst gewollt oder ist es vielleicht sogar von der Schöpfung so vorgesehen, dass wir Menschen noch ein bisschen mehr Zeit gewonnen haben, um gemeinsam zu wachsen?
Ich sehe das Letztere so.
Ja, okay.
Das sehe ich tatsächlich so. Ja. Denn ich bin ja dabei gewesen. Ja, damals ist der Kongress und der Ausschuss der Öffentlichkeit in Istanbul, ein großer Kongress. Ich bin noch nie in meinem Leben in einem so großen Kongresssaal gewesen. Man muss sich vorstellen, es war also so groß wie, mein Gott, nochmal 2, 3 Fußballfelder, nur der Kongresssaal. Und da vorne hinein saßen vielleicht nur 2, 3 Reihen besetzt. Es waren vielleicht 30, 40, vielleicht 50 Wissenschaftler. Nur die waren geladen und das waren aber alles diejenigen, die selber an die Messstation saßen. Also die selber sozusagen das Rohmaterial vor den Kollegen darstellen konnten, um einen Abgleich vorzunehmen. Und sagen, guck mal, das sind die Fakten, die sind ungeschminkt. Ja, oft ist es dann doch leicht verändert oder gar nicht veröffentlicht, wenn man dann die Daten weiterreicht, zur Regierung zum Beispiel. Glaube ich nicht verwunderlich. Und vor allen Dingen auch, um vielleicht eine Panik zu vermeiden. Auch das ist verständlich. Und das war aber auch hier der hauptsächliche Grund, warum man das unter Ausschuss der Öffentlichkeit gemacht hat. Für mich eine Sternstunde, Vera ist ja auch mit dabei gewesen. Und kann eine Sache bezeugen, die mir hilft, das Ganze auch öffentlich zu machen. Denn alleine hätte ich mich vielleicht nicht getraut. Vielleicht habe ich das ja doch alles ein bisschen missverstanden. Aber ich habe mich mit Vera nochmal abgesagt. War es wirklich genauso? Es war wirklich genauso, ich fasse das mal zusammen, dass wir gesehen haben, dass schon gleich am ersten Tag die nackten Daten, meinetwegen die Seismographen, also die ganzen Erdbebenaktivitäten von einem Referenten vorgestellt wurden. Dann die ganzen Hurricane-Aktivitäten, die ganzen Überschwemmungen, die Tsunami-Geschichten, also die Solar-Geschichten und ein großes Spektrum. Jeder auf seinem Gebiet. Und bei allen war eins gemeinsam, es war überall ein exponentieller Verlauf der Tsunami-Besteigerung. Und wenn man das gesehen hat, und das haben natürlich auch die Kollegen gesehen, wo ja zuvor jeder nur seinen Bereich abgedeckt hat, gesagt, naja gut, aber wenn man dann erkennt, dass es allen anderen in anderen Fachbereichen ähnlich geht, da wird einem schon ein bisschen mulmig. Und mir ist mulmig geworden und nicht nur mir. Ja?
Verständlicherweise, ja.
Ja, natürlich, weil man weiß von einem exponentiellen Verlauf, das kann nicht ewig so weitergehen. Ja. Und somit, wir reden hier über September 2011. Ja? Und insofern ist eine neue, zunächst mal Verlautbarung, Theorie ich gehe der Sache nach und ich kann jetzt schon sagen, es gibt sehr viele Indizien dafür, dass da eine ganze Menge dran ist, ja, dass tatsächlich ein Polsprung schon 2012 stattfand. Ich meine, das alleine, da muss man mal sacken lassen.
Okay,
wir sind ja immer noch
das ist
hier.
auch für mich neu, ja, interessant.
Wir sind
und viele haben ja auf dieses Jahr 2012 geblickt,
das kommt ja noch
Jahrzehnte vorher.
Kommt hinzu.
Also es gab ja viele Anzeichen, dass da tatsächlich was Besonderes passiert sein müsste.
Das ist das. Und du weißt ja auch, dass ich ja darüber, wie wir unser erstes Interview gegeben haben, das ist ja noch länger zurückliegend.
Ich kenne aber auch dein Zitat. Ja, in 2012 wird sich alles verändern. Die Frage ist nur, wann ist 2012?
Exakt. Ja. So. Aber gehen wir mal bei den Fakten zurück. Ja. Wenn das jetzt so stimmt, und ich möchte noch nicht so sehr über die Quellen reden und welche Belege man da vorlegt, unter anderem den Mandela-Effekt, aber das alleine reicht nicht aus. Es ist tatsächlich so, wir haben ja nachweislich im Juli 2012 den stärksten Solarflare gehabt, den es je gegeben hat, den man jemals messen konnte, den man erst 2 Jahre später veröffentlicht hat. Die Presseagentur Reuters oder dpa, wie sie alle heißen, haben die Presseinformationen von den ESA-Sprechern und NASA-Sprechern veröffentlicht, die da hießen, zum Beispiel der NASA-Sprecher sagte, es war ein Streifschuss, wenn er uns getroffen hätte, hätte er uns in die Steinzeit zurückgebombt. Es ist nicht passiert.
Also ein Sonnenwind, der sehr viel hätte bewirken können. Ja.
Stärker als das Carrington-Ereignis, wo damals ja die Telegrafenanlagen sogar anfingen zu brennen. Ja? Durch Induktionsströme der Telegrafenleitung und so weiter. Das ist ja heute ganz anderes, ja, was da passieren würde. Man hat das begrenzt allerdings bisher nur ist gut auf einen sogenannten elektromagnetischen Impuls, ja? Der dazu führt, dass die ganze Elektronik weltweit, und nicht nur Elektronik, sondern Elektrik ausfällt. Ja, also dann hätten wir ein paar Jahre teilweise keinen Strom. Das ist die große Angst auch der meisten Regierungen übrigens. Aber nehmen wir es mal energetisch. Ein solcher Impuls, den es ja faktisch gegeben, das gibt die NASA ja zu. Ja? Aber 2 Jahre später. Größte, den man je gemessen hat. Wir haben es mit einem Energiepotenzial zu tun, rein elektrisch und magnetisch und elektromagnetisch. Das sind 3 verschiedene physikalische Parameter, die da einwirken. Legt so viel Energie frei, dass man ausrechnen kann, und das haben einige gemacht, und da muss man gar nicht gut in der Mathematik sein, auch vom logischen Verständnis her, wir sind in einer sehr destabilen Lage hier auf der Erde. Damit meine ich jetzt mal die ganzen geophysikalischen Situationen. Wenn wir uns das Klima auch anschauen, da sehen wir eine ganze Menge. Und wenn da nochmal jetzt ein solcher Impuls kommt, dann ist das sozusagen das Zünglein an der Waage, um den Polsprung einzuleiten. Ist klar, oder? Ja, das erkennt man noch daran, dass selbst noch im letzten Solarzyklus, liegt 11 Jahre zurück, so lange dauert ja immer ein Sonnenzyklus, ein moderater M-Class-Flare, das ist ja so klassifiziert, ja, also C-Class, M-Class und dann kommen die X-Class-Flares, die Stärke der Impulse, die von der Sonne ausgehen, wenn sie uns dann erreichen. Aber dass ein normalerweise M-Class-Flare heute von der Sonne ausgehen, schon Dinge anrichtet, die noch in der letzten Periode, eben vor 11 Jahren, mein Gott, nochmal gerade ein X-Class-Flare zustande gebracht hat. Daran sieht man, wie empfindlich wir geworden sind, wie destabil die Situation ist, weil unser Magnetfeld der Erde auch sich abgeschirmt hat oder abgeschwächt hat und dadurch das Ganze nicht mehr abpuffert wie früher. Also mit anderen Worten, und darum jetzt an der Stelle jetzt mal, der Impuls, der ist nachweisbar, also den hat man gemessen.
Impuls von der Sonne.
Von der Sonne. Er hat uns, was die Ladungsträger betrifft, nicht direkt erreicht. Ja. Angeblich war es ja auch ein Streifschuss, denn sonst wäre es ja hier passiert, wo wir nur noch die Scherben aufgehoben hätten, das ist das Zitat des NASA-Sprechers, und die Steinzeit eingebrochen wäre. Nicht der Fall. Aber wir haben den elektromagnetischen Impuls bekommen. So, und jetzt geht es natürlich los und ich denke mal, da wird auch die Zeit nicht für ausreichen. Das will man auch und muss man erstmal verarbeiten. Ja. Das klingt sowas von schräg, ja, und abwegig und trotz alledem spricht vieles dafür, wenn man, ich sage nur eins, das Modell der Multiwelten akzeptiert. Also dieses Parallelweltenmodell. Und das ist kein Modell, wo man sagt, das ist aber sehr exotisch. Wenn man Physiker fragt und alle 10 Jahre, glaube ich, alle 10, vielleicht 15 Jahre, gibt es international einen Abgleich aller Physiker, die einfach nichts anderes tun, als abgleichen, welches Modell hat sich als falsch erwiesen, überholt, was ist Verbesserung, was ist neu entstanden. und es kommt jetzt die ganzen Jahrzehnte, ja, wo es diese Versammlung gab, wurde genau jetzt dieses Multiweltenmodell als das einzig noch. Weil wenn man das nicht akzeptiert, die Fragen und Phänomene, die dadurch entstehen, viel größer werden. Also für mich ist völlig klar, wir leben in einem Multiversum, ja, und mit verschiedenen Timelines oder Zeitlinien verbunden.
Sehr spannend. Es ist tatsächlich schwer, sich ein bisschen das vorzustellen, aber die vielen Superhelden der letzten Zeit deuten das ja auch schon an, versuchen das ein bisschen ins Bewusstsein zu bringen.
Exakt.
Das ist auf jeden Fall sehr, sehr spannend.
Ja, gut. Was auch immer, wir sind jetzt hier. Und es ist jetzt auch für mich nicht so ganz leicht, dass ich da den roten Faden nicht verliere. Ist auch für mich eine
Ich helfe mit, ich denke mit.
Ich denke auch, ich würde dich jetzt gerne da bitten, da weiterzumachen. Sonst verlaufe ich mich hier noch.
Alles wunderbar, es ist hochspannend, wunderbar, keine Sorge. Ich höre dir stundenlang zu. Aber lass uns das nochmal anschauen mit der Sonne. Also, wenn ich dich richtig verstehe, kommt also der eigentliche Schub zur Veränderung aus dem Zentrum der Galaxie durch die Sonne zu uns allen.
Ja.
Was ist es, was da auf uns kommt? Es kann ja nicht nur eine elektromagnetische Strahlung sein, sondern es sind sicher, ich sag mal, feinstoffliche Informationen, vielleicht sogar göttliche Impulse. Wie würdest du das deuten? Wie kann man das messen oder wie würdest du selber sehen, was da alles von der Sonne zu uns kommt?
Ja, du hast es richtig gesagt. Es sind ja, sagen wir, auch die Sonne ist abhängig von der Zentralsonne, ja, also das wäre, glaube ich, sogar Sirius, aber eben wir reden über das galaktische Zentrum, wie es die Mayas ja auch getan haben, Hunab-Q und so weiter. Also heute weiß man in der Astrophysik sehr genau, das ist, glaube ich, seit 3-4 Jahren wurde es zum Stand der Technik erhoben, als gesichert. Wir haben nun mal ein Zentrum in der Galaxis, Sagittarius A ist das Zentrum. Es wird als schwarzes Loch bezeichnet. Ja, auch das ist angeblich im letzten Jahr nun endlich bewiesen. Es gab ja immer noch Theorien, gibt es nicht. Quatsch, wir haben nur ein falsches Verständnis von dem, was schwarz ist. Schwarz ist nicht dunkel im Sinne der geistigen Ausrichtung, sondern schwarz ist nur, weil es das Weiße in sich ist.
Ja, beinhaltet alles. Erst war alles dunkel und dann kam das Licht, das erste Licht, das so ein Teil der Manifestation war. Ja.
Aber wie in dem Film Solar Revolution ja auch schon ausgedrückt, bildhaft ausgedrückt, ist das tatsächlich jetzt eingetreten. Da habe ich dann auch den Robert Sarkis-Karapetians mit hinzugeholt, einen Astrophysiker, der am Max-Planck-Institut lange gearbeitet hat und da seine Diplomarbeit hatte, all diese Dinge auszuwerten. Ja? Und hat festgestellt, das hat er auch veröffentlicht, dass vom Sagittarius A, also vom galaktischen Zentrum, sogenannte Mesastrahlen auf uns zukommen, uns hier auch schon erreicht haben. Also uns hier auf der Erde und natürlich auch in unser Sonnensystem. Da ist die Sonne als stärkster Gravitationskörper, der am meisten abpuffert, natürlich besonders von betroffen. Ja? Und die gibt dann ihre Informationen entsprechend an uns weiter. Okay? So muss man sich das vorstellen. Und die sogenannten Mesastrahlen, die vom galaktischen Zentrum kommen, sind sozusagen, Mesa steht für Mikrowellenlaser. Ja? Also Laser im Sinne von hochkohärent, hochgeordnet. So wie Biophoton. Hochgeordnet. Das ist eine unfassbar hohe, definieren wir unfassbar. Hohe, definiere auch das mal. Also unvorstellbar, bisher unvorstellbar hohe Energie dort, die hochgeordnet ist.
Also auch eine hochgeordnete Informationsdichte vermutlich.
Weil dazu fehlt eigentlich ein Baustein, den ich jetzt nachlegen wollte. Das tue ich jetzt. Und zwar Energie wird auch immer mit Information gleichgesetzt. Ja. Die Arbeiten von Shannon, das ist derjenige, der mit Wigner zusammen, den Kybernetiker, diesen Part schon übernommen hat. Wenn wir hier über solche Energien sprechen, reden wir auch über Information. Und da ist eine Informationsdichte und vor allen Dingen auch Komplexität, die wir uns gar nicht vorstellen können. Man hat da mal ein bisschen versucht, das zu berechnen. Das sind Zahlen, die da rauskommen. So viele Nullen, wie man könnte am Komma, da wird schon schwummrig. Ich auch jetzt gerade. Ja? Also mit anderen Worten, da kommt eine ordnende Struktur auf uns zu. In bemerkenswerter Weise, fast nur mit anderen Worten ausgedrückt, wie es die Mayas damals vor 800 Jahren prophezeit haben. Im Zolkin. Ja. Genau. So, also das ist tatsächlich was passiert. Und vielleicht an der Stelle auch noch zu betonen, dass wir, seitdem man diese Strahlen misst aus dem galaktischen Zentrum und uns teilweise sogar, weil sie ja sehr wie ein Laserstrahl auch sehr direkt kommen, ja, uns teilweise hier auch ganz direkt treffen, ja, auch eindeutig korreliert das Klima. Ja, dass die Klimaveränderung, Temperaturveränderung zum sehr großen Teil nämlich daher kommen.
Und das eben nicht nur auf diesem Planeten, sondern auch auf anderen Planeten gemessen worden.
Exakt.
Ja, wird oft verschwiegen. Aber,
das sind aber die Russen veröffentlicht haben und da war ich auch sehr vorsichtig, habe mir das angeschaut und überprüfen lassen, auch von Kollegen aus anderen Ländern, die mir gesagt haben, wir haben es überprüft, es ist so, dass auf allen, also der Mars zum Beispiel, nehmen wir ihn nur als Beispiel, hat eine wesentlich höhere Temperatur. Auf einmal kann man sich gar nicht vorstellen. Die Polkappen schmelzen und so weiter. Also auf allen Planeten, wo man das messen kann, und bei sehr vielen kann man das indirekt messen, ist die Temperatur angestiegen. Und so weit reicht unser CO2-Ausstoß nicht, dass wir den Mars noch mit kontaminieren. Okay? CO2 ist eine böse Geschichte, ganz zweifellos. Aber es ist nicht das Maß aller Dinge. Das ist tatsächlich ein Aspekt, ein ganz großer Wirkaspekt des Polsprungs, der fundamentalen Veränderung.
Ja, sehr spannend und ein sehr schönes Bild, was du da zeichnest. Und man kann ja da philosophisch auch noch mal tiefer gehen, wenn man sagt, die höchste Informationsdichte an Energie, an Information ist Liebe, ne? Und Gott. Ja? Letztlich ist Gott es, der uns da weiterführt. Das ist jetzt sehr spirituell philosophisch, aber es darf an dieser Stelle ja auch mal erlaubt sein.
Ja.
Und das heißt, wir hatten schon einen, ich sag mal, eher kleineren Polsprung. Erwartet uns noch ein größerer Polsprung? Oder wie ist da so die aktuelle Lage? Wie würdest du das sehen, wo wir heute stehen?
Also wenn wir den neuesten Stand nehmen, der Größenordnung vielleicht 10, 14 Tage her ist, weil das sind die neuesten Messungen, dann sind wir weiter, und hat sich dieser Prozess jetzt doch wieder fortgesetzt.
Okay.
Ja? Ich überlege jetzt, also meine Hypothese jetzt an der Stelle, da ist es mit Beweisführung schwierig. Sehe den Polsprung nicht als eine Strafe Gottes, ja, der dazu führen würde dann, und wäre ja die apokalyptische, übrigens Apokalypse heißt ja nichts anderes als aufdecken.
Ja.
Ja,
und das ist anscheinend ein sehr beliebtes Hobby von so vielen Utopisten und Philosophen, immer neue Kataklysmen und dramatische Szenarien zu entwerfen, wohingegen es ja auch sehr sanft und der Evolution gemäß sich entwickeln könnte.
Thomas, ich meine, uns ist allen klar, dass wir den Aspekt Krankheit als Weg akzeptieren. Ja? Wenn ein Schmerz zum Beispiel, den man hat, den Sinn hat, dass man auf etwas hinschaut, weil dort irgendetwas zu korrigieren ist, ja, dann wäre das jetzt übertragbar, weil das ist ja ein naturgemäßer Zustand. Und will da unser Körper ja nicht strafen, sondern er gibt uns Zeit, bitte kümmere dich drum. Okay? Und so ist für mich der Zustand, den wir hier auch sehen, dass wir erkennen, dass der Polsprung sich sozusagen nähert in einem Bereich. Ein Alarmglock, ein Weckruf. Ja, hinschauen, das wäre quasi der Schmerzzustand adäquat, ja, da muss ich hinschauen, ja, weil da ist ein defizitärer Bereich bei mir im Körper. Also, sodass das als der letzte Weckruf, ich bezeichne ihn als den letzten großen Weckruf, und wir hatten in den letzten Jahren, wenn wir mal die letzten 5 Jahre nur Revue passieren, doch einen auch fast exponentiellen Verlauf der Superlative, der Katastrophen, angefangen mit Covid. Ist doch unfassbar, was da passierte. Ja. Dann der Krieg jetzt, ja, Russland, und das ist auch mit Szenarien, die man da hochrechnet, wo man sagt, oh Gott, ja, und dann kommt jetzt das. Das überlagert ja nun alles nochmal. Und ich bin sehr, sehr, sehr sicher aus meiner inneren Haltung heraus, ich wiederhole nochmal, da kann ich jetzt keine Belege wissenschaftlicher Art vorlegen, aber ich spüre, dass das eindeutig genauso ist als letzter Weckruf für uns, wirklich dahin zu gehen, wo wir eigentlich evolutionsgemäß, vom Seelenplan her quasi, auch uns ausgesucht haben, das zu vollziehen, den nächsten Evolutionssprung nämlich. Ja, und da müssen wir einiges loslassen und tatsächlich nicht in die Haltung gehen von, naja, das werden wir schon aussitzen. Das wäre genau das Gegenteil, was wir tun sollten. Aussitzen hilft gar nicht. Ja. Und vor allen Dingen nicht in die Angst gehen.
Absolut, ja. Und wenn ich das richtig verstanden habe, ist ja mit dem Polsprung geht auch einher, dass das Erdmagnetfeld immer weniger wird und dadurch auch eigentlich die ganzen Erinnerungen, die ganze Vergangenheit sich ja irgendwann löst. Ja. Aber wir können es ja nur überleben, wenn wir unsere eigene innere Mitte gefunden haben und uns eben nicht mehr zu sehr an die Vergangenheit und an alle Erinnerungen und Glaubensmuster halten.
Ja, oder? Exakt. Exakt. Ich habe es ja früher so genannt, die Leichen kommen aus dem Keller. Eine Formulierung, die abgeleitet wurde aus den Ergebnissen der therapeutischen Beobachtungen, die ich gemacht habe durch die Erfindung aus den 80er Jahren. 150 Megahertz als Resonanzfrequenz der menschlichen DNA an den Körper getragen, im therapeutischen Sinne.
Was von der Sonne auch kommt. Ne?
Gleiche Frequenz wie von der Sonne, das haben wir aber später erst rausgekriegt, ist aber so, nimmt auch zu. Ja? Es geht hier nicht darum, Geräte irgendwo zu bewerben, sondern tatsächlich das Verfahren an sich. Dass es Frequenzen gibt, und von der Sonne her sind das vermehrt ja die Frequenzen, die uns in eine Erinnerung bringen, wo erkannt wird, warum wir eigentlich krank geworden sind. Und das beschränkt sich jetzt nicht nur auf den pathologischen Bereich. Ja, das haben wir ja bisher gesehen. Wir haben gesagt, aha, der hat seinen Krebs bekommen, weil. Okay, das hat derjenige selber erkannt oder diejenige. Okay, als ein Beispiel jetzt mal. Wobei ich sagen muss, das ist nicht jedes Mal passiert, ja, aber immer häufiger. Aber immer häufiger. Und ich habe gerade vor 3 Tagen ein Interview geführt mit Anwendern, die mir sagen, wir arbeiten schon seit Jahren mit mehreren von diesen Verfahren, 150 Megahertz. Zu uns kommen Leute, die sind eigentlich gar keine Patienten. Die kriegen nur mit, dass da irgendwo eine psychische Auffälligkeit da ist und lassen sich von diesen Feldern befelden, wie es so schön heißt. Und dann kommen die auf einmal die Dinge hoch, wo sie sagen, um Gottes Willen, das habe ich ja nie gelebt. Das ist etwas, was jetzt rauskommt. Weil du erkennst ich sag mal, das Biest hat die Maske verloren. Die Leichen kommen aus dem Keller, ist keine schöne, war nie eine gute Formulierung. Aber
nee, es wird halt alles offensichtlich, was im Schatten war. Ne?
Und deswegen hast du mir den Ball auch sehr schön zugespielt. Wichtig im Moment, weil die Sonne bringt es an den Tag. Im wahrsten Sinne des Wortes.
Und diese Befeldung kommt jetzt sowieso naturgemäß immer mehr zu uns. Und das ist ja eigentlich sehr tröstlich. Das ist doch spannend. Aber diesen Sprung, ne, das alles gut zu überwinden, bedarf ja einer inneren Bewusstseinsschulung. Ne? Kann man, glaube ich, schon so sagen.
Zunächst mal eine Bereitschaft.
Bereitschaft.
Und die Bereitschaft sollte da reicht keine Absichtserklärung. Also da sollte doch schon wirklich hinterfragt werden, wie sehr will ich wirklich quasi den Evolutionssprung vollziehen. Das Konzept, was ich Erde 2.0 nenne, wobei das hier Erde 1.0 wäre, also in die neue Welt, in die neue Zeit. Und das sollte man auf jeden Fall nicht anderen überlassen. Da sollte man wirklich in aller Ernsthaftigkeit eine Innenschau vornehmen und anfangen damit, sich ganz konkret Gedanken darüber zu machen, was ich will, wie ich mir wirklich meine Welt vorstelle, aus der Freude heraus und nicht, was ich nicht will. Das funktioniert sowieso nicht. So, und das ist eine sehr persönliche Geschichte, die muss jeder selbst vollziehen. Aber um dahin zu gehen, bedarf es der grundsätzlichen Dinge erstmal raus aus der Angst. Um da rauszukommen, ist im Grunde genommen die Aufklärung, wie wir sie jetzt betreiben, wichtig. Zum Beispiel, ja, weil einfach nur mal, geh mal nicht in die Angst, sag das mal einen ängstlichen Menschen, schwierig. Ja?
Genau, aber orientiere dich an der Freude. Was ist deine Freude? Das ist schon leichter.
Und die haben wir ja alle schon mal erlebt. Also da eine Rückerinnerung, das ist ja auch eine Methode, die ich mal angeboten habe, die stellt dir Vorübungen, Ausschau zu halten nach Momenten der Freude, die wir schon erfahren haben, der echten Freude, da wo das Herz aufgegangen ist. Und da gibt es ja keine Zeit. Der Körper stellt sich sofort darauf ein und ist dann wieder in dieser Freude mit all den Neurotransmittern und Hormonen, die dann da wieder ausgeschüttet werden. Und wir strahlen diese Frequenz aus und koppeln sie ins morphogenetische Feld auch für die anderen, die bedürftiger sind als wir. Ja. Also das ist die richtige Richtung. Und das ist da für mich der große Aufruf gerade.
Ja, und wunderbar. Ich denke gerade an Heart Math Institute, an diese Forschung, dass diese Freude ist ja im Herzen, aus dem Herzen. Und da strahlen wir ja, ich glaube, 500.000 Mal stärkere Energie aus, als das Gehirn fähig ist. Was ja auch schon zeigt, Herzenskraft ist das eigentlich Wesentliche.
Und Thomas, da schließt sich wieder ein schöner Kreis am Ende. Wir haben am Anfang von Magnetfeldern gesprochen. Und das Herz strahlt 500 Magnetfelder aus. Das Magnetfeld ist viel stärker als das der Erde. Als das des Gehirns, pardon, bleiben wir mal beim Körper jetzt mal, und ist das stärkste Agens. Und da trifft es zu, was Schiller gesagt hat. Die Welt wird sich dann ändern, wenn der Verstand aus dem Herzen gedeutet wird. Und das ist die Entsprechung.
Toll.
Lassen wir das Herz weiter wachsen.
Ja. Wunderbar, wunderschön. Ich danke dir sehr. Ihr merkt schon, in dieser Kürze der Zeit konnten wir hier und da kleine Dinge nur andeuten. Alles Weitere findet ihr in den Büchern von Dieter Pröers, in den Online-Kursen. Ich glaube, euer neues Projekt heißt Entscheidung. Ja, entscheide dich für deinen Weg. Bin ich auch sehr gespannt, was da gibt. Sicher auch viel zu erzählen. Wunderbar, lieber Dieter. Ich danke dir sehr. Dein neues Buch Verschlusssache Zirbeldrüse. Da sprechen wir gleich in einem zweiten Talk drüber.
Dankeschön.
Alles Liebe euch. Also, wir befinden uns in spannenden Zeiten.
so that you think through them a little bit more. These are pretty softball easy questions. These are kind of things that if you'd ever talked to anybody in your entire life about these issues, this would have come up in an argument. When Lance can't think about how to talk around like a 9-month abortion, what it tells me is you've never spoken to anybody in your entire life that has disagreed with your position. But if you want to, there actually is a good reason for 9th-month abortions, and I'll give it to you. Here you go.
The pro-choice argument.
See, like Lance, you guys aren't seeing this, okay? But I see this because I see everything. Lance is asking these questions. Oh no, Tim Pool looked it up and got him. Oh my God, dude. Oh no, God. Oh, bro, he got walked around so hard. Oof, it was like, I think it was some of these were worse than I thought they'd be. There are so many wild exchanges here. Oh my God.
So let's, can we make the argument then that
I don't even think this is the worst.
The use of guns on people are allowed?
The use of guns on people are allowed?
To end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No, I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months, I would say at 9 months, because it only happens according to the stats based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
No. Hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to 9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
it's not a trick question. You're allowed
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado's specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason. They could just decide that they're bored.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean?
The funny thing is if you read Judith Thompson's original paper that makes the argument for abortion, that's like the most famous paper in defense of abortion, she even draws the distinction in that paper where she says, you have a right to have an abortion to protect your bodily autonomy, but do not confuse the right to have an abortion with the right to kill the fetus. That those two things are actually separate things. The fact that the fetus dies during an abortion is incidental to the fact that you're having an abortion. So in the case of like an 8 or 9 month old child, you have the right to have an abortion such that you can abort the pregnancy, but that doesn't give you a right to kill the child, and you may even have an ethical obligation to the life of that child. That is a really important distinction that she makes in that paper. Not that anybody's actually read it or gives a fuck about reading any of these things, but
like you could just C-section and then put up for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it does. But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
But hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Wait, hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it?
Hold on.
And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
We're talking about the removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no, but she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does. And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable? Do you think that's a good thing to do? I would be like, no, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But the
Bodily
baby-
autonomy doesn't stop
the
at my
baby-
morality. Tim,
baby
it's
is
not
being-
my...
This is one of the things that I fought with Hassan so hard over. I hate it when people do this thing where it's like, do you think this is morally acceptable? And they go, well, I wouldn't do it. And it's like, I didn't ask you that. Do you think it's like a morally acceptable? Well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't recommend it. Like, nobody's asking if you would recommend it. I don't know why you're fucking saying that. Literally nobody here is talking about if you would recommend it or if you would do it personally. The question is do you think it's morally acceptable? Oh God, that triggers the fuck out of me.
My choice.
Right? So let's.
Does anybody have the one on the meth question? Why the fuck would you take that optics L and then you get canceled? Seriously, nobody bites those bullets but you. Wait, which bullets? Wait, you think it's biting a bullet to talk about what's morally allowed or not? What?
Believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights.
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body.
Hold on.
Not
What
her.
about
Yes.
meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name of the service is in the United States.
Child services?
I guess
Child and child
DCFS
services?
would be.
Oh,
yeah.
it's her body though.
Yeah, it's her body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the big deal?
The big deal is that she's intentionally trying to kill a child.
What are you doing?
Hold on there a minute.
Yeah, and I see where we're going.
I don't understand what you're saying. It's her body.
It's her
if
body.
If she wants to do meth, what's the problem?
Well, first off, doing meth is illegal, period. Doesn't matter if you're doing it.
You believe that the moment after the child.
Oh no. Oh, he's like, oh shit.
I think you want to know what I think? I think there is a transgenocide,
Okay.
and I think it's you
Okay.
because you're sterilizing a lot of these people.
How so?
I mean, they're literally sterilizing them. The surgery to remove the gonads, hysterectomies, and puberty and cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers have a high rate of sterilization. I mean, first of all, removal of the gonads in the uterus is an absolute sterilization, and then puberty blockers have a very high rate, and cross-sex hormones have an extremely high rate of sterilizing the individual. So these people can no longer reproduce. That's genocide.
Is this the joke you're gonna go for?
Joke? You are removing these people's ability to reproduce. And if they're at a young age and they haven't had the ability, like for instance, Jazz Jennings can never have kids. Jazz Jennings also, and this is probably part of your studies, can't actually feel any sexual feeling of any kind.
Do you have any idea how weird this sounds right now? Like, why are you obsessing with a stranger's genital pleasure? That's so weird. That's so bizarre.
That was very weird yourself.
You guys are all
weird.
weird.
So I'm talking about adults who engage in activities, which is a large portion of the global economy, whether you like it or not. Sex sells, they say. And when I say this person will never have this ability, you go, how weird is that?
It's weird for you to fixate on a stranger's genital pleasure. That's strange. That's so bizarre.
Well, she's public about it.
But see,
why.
you're not making an argument right now, is my point.
I'm not. I'm saying it's weird. It's not an argument.
Yeah,
I'm just that's an observation.
So you're trying to make an appeal to emotion and an appeal to shame.
I'm just giving you my genuine thought when you say something like that. Like,
well, that it was a really fucking pathetic attempt at trying to make an argument.
Talk about that? Why should we discuss whether or not she has genital feeling? That's not important. It's not. It's not in my business.
So let's focus then on the sterilizing of the individual. Are you okay with that?
Who's sterilizing people?
Jazz Jennings is sterile.
Why are we going back to Jazz Jennings? I don't know
is
anything
famous.
about her.
Because Jazz is a famous individual on cable television.
So if she is sterile for whatever reason, what does that have to do with me? Why does that concern me?
Do
why
you
should I pass
support
legislation?
The sterilization of teenagers.
This is such a weird way to frame this. Like
you are
You can't just keep saying it's weird.
removing teenagers' ability to have children.
I'm not doing anything. I'm not a doctor, Tim.
You
I don't have
I'm not doing it. It's not me.
Right?
I support people having access to health care. Of course. Why would I want to prevent that just because some people have bigotry towards them?
Let's try again. You seem scared of this. 1776's Life says, what is a woman?
Would you like me to answer that?
Yeah.
A woman is an adult human female.
Dude,
Easy
can't
enough?
watch
I
these
agree with-
clips.
What?
Yeah, the whole thing. You can't watch clips. If you want to watch all the clips and see all of him getting... Dude, Lance blocked me. I have taken so many shits on this dude. The guy and I clashed like a motherfucker. I'm not here to suck his dick off. And 9 times out of 10, you know, I'm side with your side and shit, right? So it is not in character for me to just be a contrarian for no reason. I watched the debate. Most of the time, Lance is right. You can't keep watching these clips just shitting on him.
Okay, would you?
The whole thing is, it's worth a watch. Like, the guy does really well, especially when you get into the discussion about meta-analysis. Watch Tim get so mad because he's getting called on all his shit and he can't defend it. But if you keep watching the clips and with no context of before and after or anything like that, it's gonna look terrible.
Okay. Do you want me to how long is the show again?
I think it's like 2 hours maybe.
Yeah, fuck it, link me up. Okay, I'll watch it just for you, Lycan, okay? Because I love you.
Just for me? All right, buddy, here, I got you the
much,
link.
Okay.
I fucking love you, man. I'm gonna DM it to you right now. Oh,
Click
real quick,
that-
before you go into it. Meth.
Yeah.
There was the meth point, the abortion point, and the Jazz Jennings are like the 3 where he like does put his foot in his mouth. So I need to say those before you watch this all. And like and said, he did great the entire time. Those 3 he does poorly on, but everything else I think he does really well.
Gucci. Okay.
Look out for the meta-analysis part of the discussion, and the left-handed one does really well there.
Gotcha.
Anyway,
all right.
love you. Bye.
Outrage continues to grow over deadly subway chokehold encounter. They say the death of a subway rider who was put into a chokehold by a former Marine on the train has been ruled a homicide, and now activists are calling for charges to be filed. They have planned several protests and rallies on Thursday as the NYPD has issued a call for public help in their investigation. Jordan Neely, 30, died from a compression of the neck, the city's medical examiner determined Wednesday. Neely is recognizable to some New Yorkers as a Michael Jackson impersonator who regularly danced in the Times Square Transit Hub. On Monday afternoon, he was yelling and pacing back and forth on an F train in Manhattan. Witnesses and police said when he was restrained by at least 3 people.
Supposedly, I saw a picture of a Reddit account. Where apparently somebody noticed him dancing and said that he was like acting out and being aggressive and a threat to people back in 2018. So apparently this guy's been, if that Reddit account is to be believed, or his 42 arrests are to be believed. Wait, was it 20? It might have been 2013, not 2018. I thought it was 2018. But if it's to be believed, then he has a history of kind of like violent behavior on the subway.
Including a U.S. Marine veteran who pulled one arm tightly around his neck. A physical struggle ensued, leading to Neely losing consciousness. He was rushed to Lenox Hill Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. On Wednesday, a medical examiner determined Neely's his death was a homicide. However, that does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a homicide. Okay, that's the stupidest bit of writing I've ever heard. As a murder, they mean. Homicide means death caused by person. It doesn't mean criminal. So what they're trying to say is...
Homicide means death caused by person, doesn't mean criminal. Is that true? Is manslaughter considered homicide? I have no idea. Is manslaughter a homicide? Homicide refers to all criminal offenses involving a person's death and therefore encompasses both murder and manslaughter. Oh, okay, gotcha. Oh, homicide probably means death of human or whatever, right? That's probably what it means. Like regicide is death of royalty. Patricide is death of parent, father. Homicide is probably death of human. Huh? It
does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a homicide. Okay, that's the stupidest bit of writing I've ever heard. As a murder, they mean. Homicide means death caused by person. It doesn't mean criminal.
True.
So what they're trying to say is, though the death was ruled a homicide, it does not mean the case will be prosecuted as a murder. That is up to the Manhattan DA's office, which is investigating. But I suppose I'm probably being a little bit too harsh because you can, they're not being clear here. You can make the argument there's reckless homicide, there's negligent homicide. And so what they're saying is it's not clear that he will be criminally charged. They probably just should have said. They're going to say, as a part of our rigorous ongoing investigation, we'll review the medical examiner's report, assess all available video and photo footage, identify and interview as many witnesses as possible, and obtain additional medical records, read a statement from a spokesperson for the DA. So we've got video coming out of New York. Protesters, I believe this was yesterday, were seen in the streets, and the police made some arrests. And we'll get into it in a little bit, but one of our reporters, Elad Eliyahu, was physically assaulted by one of the protesters and had his property destroyed while he was in the process of doing journalism. But let's just get down to brass tacks here, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of arguments about this one. This is the story of a guy who was having a mental breakdown. I guess the news that recently came out was that he was a subway performer and his mental health collapsed after his, I think his mom was killed, is what they're reporting.
Jesus.
And after that, he kind of just lost it. And then he had been arrested 40 times. He had once punched a 67-year-old woman in the face. And so as he was belligerent and on the subway, reportedly threatening people, saying that he would take it, he was ready to die and he would hurt people, this is when the three men subdued him. Reportedly, the Marine told everyone to call 911 and get the police down there. And then he ended up dying, which has resulted in the left, like AOC, whether or not people, I don't know if you consider her left.
Vancouver. I know there's like islands and shit that experience would
Shit all over us and ignore these problems. Then finally, when three guys
ignoring this, I told you, no one's on the other side of this. No one is pro push people onto trains.
Where's your protest? Where's your protest?
Where's my protest?
Yeah, where's your protest?
Where's your Rikers protest?
We had it on the show, but you don't watch the show.
You did a protest? You did an actual protest? You guys stood up and then walked to the...
It's somebody said it in chat. Like, these guys are like both sitting on such extreme ends. They're like not even communicating with each other. It's like it's like so silly. Jesus.
We don't go on the streets ever.
But
Right?
I'm not blaming you for not talking about that, Tim, because this is the problem of, like, you are judging someone based on absence, based on your absence of caring about something. Why haven't you talked about this, Lance? The fact that you haven't talked about this means that you don't care about that.
That's not what I said.
That's not true, though.
That's not what I said.
That's the implication of what you were saying right now.
My implication is, instead of helping us deal with this when we talk about it, you make up garbage about us and then post nonsense on the internet.
When have I brought up garbage about people pushing people to trains? This is the most random
I'm not
example.
talking about you saying, I'm saying you don't talk about it, right? I'm not criticizing you for not talking about it. I'm saying finally, when there are people who are like, we've had 25 people pushed in front of trains, we've had 2 of them killed, I'm not gonna let this person hurt somebody, it's y'all saying that person should go to prison. It's like, how is that solving the problem? You guys are making it worse. Your protests, your support for the criminals make this worse.
So our solution to this, if you're asking, when you're saying you mean the left, right? Our solution to a lot of this is that
you're speaking in support of the criminal, so I'm saying you.
Okay, so I am saying that the solution to a lot of this would be investing very heavily in things like healthcare, like getting and making sure that people have access to it, and not cutting the restrictions, like allowing people to have access to healthcare, not as a requirement based on how much money they have, based on their income, but allowing them to get the care they need. That would have gone a long way to preventing a problem like this and future problems that are going to happen. I have no idea what's going on with the 25 people who've been pushed in front of trains. If it happens to be because people have mental illness, this is a tangible solution that we could work towards. This is something that are you against that idea about investing heavily into mental health care, public health care? Well, then there you go. So that's a much better line.
So here's
right?
my issue. My issue is when this story came out in October, we talked about it. And we said, why is this happening? What are the solutions? What are the problems? When this story comes out now, you, completely ignorant of what's been going on in New York, side with the criminal. And so people like me are flabbergasted that we've been focused on the issue of crime, the issue of mental health, the entire time, going back several years. And this is why I left in New York, because 2 cops got murdered outside of my apartment. And then what do we hear? Protesters in the street defending the criminals.
You keep saying criminal. I have a problem with criminalizing people.
I think one of the craziest types of examples, one of the craziest examples of this type of kind of behavior going on, I don't know if anybody remembers it. Do you remember when there was I think there was a woman who called the police because there was a guy outside that was trying to bang his way into an apartment. He might have even shot a couple times. And I think the cops ended up showing up, had a 2-hour standoff with this guy, and eventually shot and killed him. The family of that guy did a GoFundMe and raised more money than the woman whose apartment was shot into, who was like innocently badgered.
There's bullet, there was casings in the hallway. The shot went through my door to the pillar to the kitchen. I was cooking food for my kids. He's dead now, so that can't happen, right?
Now, this afternoon, just as the protest was starting to get underway against police violence, the woman who lived in the apartment directly next door to Tekle showed up. Her name is Arabella Yarborough, and she says she was cooking dinner for her 2 young children on Wednesday night when bullets began flying through her walls. She shared these photos of the aftermath of the shooting with us that show multiple bullet holes through her front door and through her bathroom wall. She confronted the family of Tekle, saying she had 5 minutes to live while Tekle had 6 hours to choose life or death.
That man was armed. George Floyd was not armed. Breonna Taylor was not armed. Amir Lockett, he was armed, and he had his own guns, but they came into his home while he's licensed to carry and killed him. He did not shoot fire. This man intentionally tried to kill us.
It was unbelievable. Like, because people were so keen on, like, the cops were like, oh my God. That was wild.
People who are homeless, or people who are poor, or people who are mentally ill, and then suddenly,
I'm not saying he's a criminal for being poor. I'm saying he's a criminal because he threatened people with harm. Like, incitement to violence is a crime, just like AOC says, right?
I really want to see the start of this video footage. I want to see the moment where he was threatening the very people who tried to take him down.
He doesn't have to be threatening the very people,
the witnesses,
though, right?
the media, and the police say this is what happened, or we can agree. No one has any idea, so there's no point in even talking about it.
I think the interesting maybe confluence is that you were mentioning preventative measures are a way to go about it. What do you think about defensive measures, like people should be armed and ready for this kind of thing regardless of the prevention methods?
I mean, when it comes to defensive measures and people should be armed, I'm going to probably be on the exact opposite as the rest of you, because you're probably very pro-gun here, right? I'm just making, we don't have the same problems in Canada that you do in the United States for mass shootings, for mass gun violence, for that kind of stuff.
You have 30 million people, don't you? Is it 30 million?
Okay, so by ratio of the population, Tim. So if you compare ratio of the population, Canadians to America, we don't have mass shootings like you do. No one else does. It's a uniquely American problem. The mass shooting thing is a uniquely American thing.
Obesity is pretty heavy here.
Well, it's.
Why would you
I don't
bring
think
up
it's fair to say
obesity?
uniquely American, because there are mass shootings in many other countries.
Oh, there is, but it's a uniquely American problem that it's disproportionately happening here.
Well, mass killings aren't a uniquely American problem, but mass killings done with the use of firearms is much more uniquely American. I don't think anyone's going to debate that countries that have fewer firearms are going to have fewer people killing each other with firearms. It then becomes
Australia has more per capita than the United States. Is that right?
Per capita?
That is not true. No country comes close to the United States.
List of countries by no. Okay, I'm sorry. That was a mistake.
Sorry,
El
Australia.
Salvador, Venezuela.
And when you're correct,
so is it right if I just finish my thought?
Sure.
Yeah. So my basic point.
That was way off. The United States is not the most. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th.
El Salvador.
And so of all the other countries in that list, which of them are considered part of the G20? You have to compare countries that have similar economic systems, similar economic societal structures. The United States places #1 when you compare them to any other G20 country.
It's true that as far as developed nations go, the United States does have a much higher rate of gun violence. I don't deny that. My argument is simply that other nations do have higher rates. Depending on the nation that you're looking at, there's still a pretty decently high homicide rate in a lot of developed countries, and there are a lot of mass killings. In the United States, those mass killings are generally carried out with firearms, but according to CDC studies, firearms are used to prevent more violent crimes each year than they're used to commit. So it's a much more complex argument than simply saying the U.S. has more firearm deaths, therefore restricting firearm ownership would prevent those.
Let me ask you too. Do you know what country has the most grenade attacks?
I only know the answer because I saw you typing it. I think it's Sweden, right?
I actually didn't type that in. I searched for it. By the way, and AOC calling it a public murder. I'm like, yo, AOC, I didn't see you call out the public murder in the subway trains. And again, maybe it's ignorance. But the problem I see is, this is why I refer to the left as NPCs or a cult. There is complete ignorance to the problem ongoing, and then a hyperpolarization in a single moment in the wrong direction, which makes the problem worse.
You know what's so wild is the other side feels the exact same way.
Except
in the other
we're not
direction.
conservatives.
The opposite direction.
Except we're not conservatives.
In the exact same.
You see, that's the problem.
Okay, so
is it all right if I jump in with something, right? Because I've been reluctant.
He's a conservative. He's a moon lord, and I'm a traditionalist.
I've been reluctant to interject because I don't want to just dogpile. And so I didn't want to get in on it.
Oh no, I'm
huge part of that argument.
For the dog pile. I signed
you're
up.
Not. I promise.
I'm sitting in
Yates'
chair,
not.
right? This is where Yates sat. Did Yates sit here? No, I'm here for the dog pile.
So I think when you talk about mental health and trying to solve the problem of mental health in this country, that is a deceptively simple way of putting it, right? Every single person in this room would have a very different idea of how that problem should be solved. And I agree with you that right now Republicans aren't doing a whole lot to talk about mental health issues, at least with respect to whatever mental health issue that this specific person is dealing with.
But that's because New York is not a Republican place.
No. I totally agree with that too. But I'm saying, he was saying, why don't Republicans do more to advocate for mental health treatment? My point, however, is that I think the kind of advocacy you'd see from conservatives on how to solve the problem of bad mental health in the United States would be a much different set of policy prescriptions than you would want. So one example of this,
well,
right?
Actually, what Ian said.
So what Ian said, and there's a number of different directions you could take this in. My fundamental belief is that we live in a culture that encourages man to live in ways that man is not meant to live, and you just see negative health outcomes from that, both mental and physical. However, when you look at traditional psychological definitions of mental illness and how we used to treat it, back in the 1950s, you had about 500,000 people in the United States in insane asylums. By the 1980s, it's about 100,000. Okay, so without even adjusting for the increase in population size, there's a significantly lower number of people who are committed. And part of that is because the requirement to get somebody committed involuntarily to a mental health facility at that time was they can't take care of themselves. Today, they have to demonstrate that they are a danger to themselves and others first before they can be committed. Now, is someone not being able to take care of themselves necessarily the perfect indicator of whether they need to be committed to one of these institutions? I have no idea. However, what I do know is once we push the goalpost all the way in the other direction and say they have to...
Is he saying we need to be like committing en masse people in the United States? Wait, what?
Demonstrate that they are a significant danger to themselves or others, oftentimes they don't get committed until after they've already hurt somebody. So it's a much more complicated situation than saying we just have to throw more money at this system when we don't even have a solid definition of what good mental health is and also at which point someone should be committed.
So I think the important point, going back to what I agree.
Interesting.
This is not a conservative show, but if you are in a cult, you wouldn't know that. You would only hear what the cult says.
So here's what I have to respond to that. If an objective person, say an alien, just showed up and looked at your channel, Tim, and went through all the videos, and you were to ask them, poll them, is this person and his views, where would you place them? Most likely they would say conservative. That's going to be my bet.
That's actually wrong.
Yes.
But more because the guests that come on tend to identify.
Not just even the guests, but the way they're framed, the thumbnail.
He needs to land. I'm giving you all this framework, okay? You guys need to be doing this. It's populist and like anti-populist, or like establishment and anti-establishment. That's where a lot of these political paradigms are falling on today. Because Tim probably wouldn't be considered traditionally like a conservative. He probably wouldn't be, but he has a ton of anti-establishment takes. But considering that liberals and progressives generally want to build an establishment, it's easy to confuse a populist, anti-establishment conservative or centrist or whatever for just like a conservative person. Is Tim right-wing though? Probably not in like a traditional sense. Probably not, but it's just so much easier to just nail them down on the anti-establishment. Because if you call him conservative, he's probably going to give you like 10 different reasons why he's not. Right? It's just not worth it. Yeah.
The words that you put in red and the whether or not you're supporting.
Yeah, the issue is that Lance himself is probably somewhat anti-establishment too, and he doesn't want to recognize how much in common he and Tim have. That's why when people will come onto these shows, like Lance, and they're like, oh, well, I'm left and you're right, we're going to disagree. And then as soon as Tim Pool utters something like, well, we hate both parties, and Lance's like, oh, me too, I also hate both political parties, oh! And they realize, oh, actually, you two guys are a lot more similar than you think.
Or going against one, either the Democrats or the Republicans, but hey, you tell me that you guys don't like the Democrats and you don't like the Republicans. This is not a Republican stream. You don't want to even endorse the Republicans in any way, shape, or form, or vote.
Most conservative people today aren't considered traditionally conservative either. That's kind of true-ish, yeah, because of the Trump mind break, basically. But the Republicans in the Republican Party are on a journey of self-discovery right now, and we'll see where they end up when they've figured themselves out. We're still not too sure where they're gonna wind up at.
For them, I don't vote
on party lines personally.
Okay, sure, but there's a lot of right-wingers who watch you, right? So that's what I mean when I say you do have a voice and you do have an audience of right-wingers who are going to vote at one point or another. 30% of your audience is right-wing.
Most of the people who watch this, the largest faction is libertarian.
Okay.
The next largest would be considered traditional liberal. Oh, no, I think...
but along party lines, who are the libertarians going to vote for? Not the Libertarian Party. Most likely they're going to vote for whoever...
When they come on this show and say abolish the police.
One of the two, Republican or Libertarian.
Yeah, most likely,
usually.
yes, one of the two. So that's why I say, Tim, for the people who watch you who are Republican-leaning, why not frame it that way for them so that they can actually start pushing more money into that?
That's why I'm here.
That's
basically true, I think, in a lot of ways.
That's what Moonlord does.
So here's what I think. I think you're in a cult, right? Okay. I think the cult is derived from algorithms on social media.
Okay.
So you only surround yourself with this loud noise. We saw a really good example of this with that Sisson guy. Is that his name? Harry?
I don't know.
Harry Sisson, yeah.
Sisson. Those two guys went on the Tim Dillon podcast, and he said, please, no, don't clip this.
Okay.
I will lose followers. I can rag on Trump all the time, and people still watch the show. Seamus and I can have an argument over me being pro-choice and him being pro-life, and people still watch the show. And if I pull up all sides with 3,770 ratings, Tim Pool is a centrist. But you think I'm conservative because you live in a bubble, right?
Because I'm too far left, the Overton window is too far away, is what you're saying?
Yes. So like when I go hang out in Washington, D.C.,
right.
And I go to National Harbor, or I go to Baltimore, Maryland Life. I'm in Baltimore.
I don't know why
places.
you do that. In Washington, D.C.?
The people who come up to me and are like, hey, man, I'm a big fan, are not conservatives. They hate Donald Trump. In fact, I was at a poker table last week, and a guy said, I just hate Donald Trump. Man, I can't stand him. I wish somebody else would run, but I can't vote for Joe Biden. I think you're surrounded. We talk about this quite a bit.
Sure.
If all sides has nearly 4,000 people rating me, and the end result is centrist, if I'm actively pro-universal health care, not to the same degree as like Bernie Sanders, I believe in private health insurance, and I'm pro-choice, I am absolutely not a conservative in this country.
I've listened to your debates on pro-choice, though. You're pro-choice from a Tim Pool's perspective.
I'm pro-choice from a traditional liberal perspective, as traditional liberals
not
have
from
been.
what people who would define themselves as pro-choice would say, right? Like you concentrate very heavily on the 9th-month abortions and baby guillotines and stuff like that. Like
what?
Yeah. I remember watching you debate.
Baby guillotines?
Yeah. Okay. So baby guillotines is my own personal interpretation and joke of it. But you were talking about how women, how like disgusted you are that women may have an abortion in the 9th month, right? Or even
a viable baby.
That's going to be a position held by like 90% of people, by the way. That is if you want a tip, hey, if there's any Democratic strategist, political strategy people out there that are looking for free advice on how to run your shit, third-term abortion, leave it the alone. Literally, nobody likes it. Nobody in this country likes third trimester abortion. Nobody likes it. Nobody likes it. Democrats don't like it. Republicans don't like it. Nobody likes it. Drop that shit, okay? Fight for first trimester if you want. Maybe second trimester. Nobody likes third trimester abortion. As soon as 9-month abortion comes up, all you say is like, oof, yeah, that's pretty bad. Probably don't want that happening. That's it. Like that. It's an insanely edgy and edge case position. Very, very, very few people support, even the Democratic Party, support third trimester abortion. That's a wild position.
Of a viable baby. I wanted to scream at that time, being like, women who have abortions in the 9th month, they're not doing that because they got bored, or all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't care anymore. They do that because it's a tragedy. Like statistically, women who are getting abortions in the 9th month, it's because there's a medical complication.
Also, stop bringing up the medical complication thing, because 99% of even conservatives will agree with this. Even my mom agrees with this, who's like, my mom, I think, would be a single issue abortion voter. And even she'll say, Stevie, it's not an abortion then, it's about saving one life and you can only pick one. That's different, Stevie. Even the craziest conservative will concede that in the case of the mother's life being at risk, it's probably okay to have an abortion. It is such a fringe, for you to inhabit such a fringe position and then attacks like an equally fringe position is so stupid. Oh my God.
That could kill them. That's why they have to do it. What do you
false
mean false?
That's
the real world.
I already said viable. Try again.
What are you talking about, Tim?
I already said abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months.
This is ridiculous.
Do you know what viable means?
Yes.
It means the baby can survive on its own without medical complications.
Absolutely.
And why legalize abortion of viable fetuses at 9 months when the baby could just be delivered?
Women are not getting abortions at the 9th month for pleasure or because they want to suddenly do it for kicks. No, that doesn't happen. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy of the highest. Because there are medical operations that could kill the mother and they need to get an abortion.
Why legalize?
I just told you that's the reason why.
So all right, I'll try and break it down for you. Can the baby survive? Let's talk about a baby. The baby can survive on its own, yes?
Sure.
Okay. Abortion is defined by Planned Parenthood and the law as terminating the life of the baby.
Correct.
Why terminate the life of the baby if it can survive on its own?
Because it could kill both of them. That's why it is done at that stage.
So how do you
kill one or the other, and they have to make the tough decision at that point.
So how do you remove the fully formed 9-month baby at that point?
Oh, I don't know the science of it. I've never performed that operation before.
So shouldn't the law then be, if the baby must be removed and it is alive and capable of survival, all actions must be taken to preserve the life of the child and the mother?
And again, I think even Judith Thompson, who wrote the big paper, would probably agree with this position. And it's an easy position to agree with. Fine, if you have to do an early delivery or whatever for an 8 or 9 month pregnancy, okay. But obviously, care should be taken to save the life of the baby, right?
I would say they'd probably choose the mother first, right?
Why?
He's saying if they deliver a healthy, like...
And this is such a strange scenario. How often do you think that this happens and all of a sudden they're like, the baby could have lived. You could have done it. Why did you choose the other option? It's like, this is a tragedy of the highest order because they want to have the kid. At 9 months pregnant, a woman is on her way to give birth. So it's like, it's the worst possible fucking thing that could happen to her.
That's not always, again, I said I didn't want a dogpile, but that's statistically not true. There have been surveys done on women who had later abortions, and for a pretty large sum of them, it's because they were not sure whether the father of the child was willing to commit, and then when they found out he wasn't willing to commit, they would have the abortion. And so there are different stats you're going to find for different points in pregnancy. When it comes all the way along to 9 months, I don't have the statistical data on that. However, I do know for later term abortions, there are reasons other than what is traditionally considered to be a medically necessary reason. For example, some people will say that a negative mental health outcome is a reason to abort a child later in pregnancy. So if the woman is depressed, they will list that as a reason for why the child had to be terminated to save the life of the mother, which is certainly not the case, very obviously. And to the point of what Tim is saying, when we say there's no such thing as a medically necessary abortion, the principle behind that is, if there is an operation which is necessary to save the life of the mother, and then she miscarries the child as a result of that operation, which was necessary to save her life, that's not an abortion because nobody's intent was to go in there and end the life of the unborn child. And so if a woman's having complications where she has to deliver early, you deliver the child early, of course. And if you're at a point in pregnancy where the child isn't viable, that's a horrible tragedy. You still do what you can to save the child, but you can't always save the child, and we understand that. But to go in and rip the child apart to end their life is never something which is medically required, even though an early delivery may be.
But are there situations where if the baby is in, this is so harsh, in its complete form, that even trying to induce early pregnancy could kill the mother, so they have to break the baby's body apart so that they can get out without killing the mother?
I've never heard of such a thing. So, there are letters, by the way, signed by literally thousands of doctors who have
let me ask. Can I
just say one thing? So 88% of abortions are in the first 12 weeks.
Yes.
88.
Yeah.
88% of abortions.
True.
Less than...
This is another reason why it's so easy to not defend third trimester abortions, because nobody even wants them. Okay, very few people. It's such a rare type of abortion to even happen. There's just no reason to defend it. There's no reason for it.
1.3% of abortions take place near the 8th or 9th month.
How many abortions
is that? Guttmacher?
Well, how many is that?
I don't know the actual numbers. This is the percentages.
13,000.
Okay, but we're talking about less than 1.3%.
Hold on, 13,000. That's the number of people who die from gun violence in the U.S. each year that aren't suicides.
Gentlemen,
so that's
I am
13,
not here to justify abortion when it happens as in it's a good thing.
No.
I don't celebrate it.
You're saying it doesn't happen.
No.
You're saying it doesn't happen. It happens 13,000 times.
I said it's extremely. There is 338 million Americans. I'm sorry. The numbers are going to be a little daunting. Yes, the numbers will be high. I'm not here to celebrate that.
I don't understand your argument then.
My argument is that there's a lot of human beings.
13,000 people die from guns, we have a problem, right?
If 13,000 people die from guns, there's a problem. Yes, of course.
If 13,000 late-term abortions happen, is that a problem?
These are completely different things.
Well, how so?
Okay, so if someone dies by a gun, have they been shot? Were they killed? Did they kill themselves? Was it a suicide?
Oh no, Lance.
Was it a gang violence thing? Who knows?
That's a good question.
Can I clarify? I don't want to argue. I just want to clarify.
I need to answer this.
Well,
in the case of
but
in the case of late-term abortions, more often than not, when statistics say, and when they are polled, they say the reason that they are giving it is because it's a medical complication that could result in the death of the mother or the child.
Right. So let's. Can we make the argument then that the use of guns on people are allowed?
The use of guns of people are allowed
to end their lives is allowed.
So that's murder. You're describing murder.
So if Colorado, for instance, passes a law saying there is no medical requirement for an abortion, is it wrong to kill the baby?
You're trying to compare murdering someone with a gun to a woman having to make a medical decision that could basically preserve her life.
No. I said not a medical reason. That's what I'm saying.
Should she have the ability to have an abortion for any reason? Yes.
At 9 months.
At 9 months. I would say at 9 months, because it only happens, according to the stats, based on complete medical necessity. She has a right to do it.
No. Hold on. Colorado legalized abortion up to...
When Lance is dancing around this and keeps saying the medical necessity thing, it makes it seem like he doesn't want to answer the question, because...
9 months with no medical reason required. Do you agree with that?
I agree with that decision, yes.
So the baby could survive on its own, and the mother is legally now allowed to just end its life.
She has the right if she wanted to. You're saying so in Colorado, and
It's not a trick question. You're
I know, but I'm asking you because you're the one who brought this up. I don't know what Colorado's specific law says. So if you were saying that in Colorado, women have the ability at 9 months to have an abortion for any reason. They could just decide that they're bored.
Yeah.
Okay, I think they should have the right to do that, but the stats show that they're not doing that. But they should have a legal right to do that. Yes, it's their body, it's their choice, of course.
So this is what I disagree on. I think if the baby needs to be removed from the woman, there's no reason to kill it. You know what I mean? Like you could just C-section and then put it for adoption.
But I'm telling you that doesn't happen.
But it does. But hold on.
Like you might be able to bring up anecdotes, but the stats don't say that.
But hold on. Like, why allow it to happen? I just don't understand. Are you arguing? Wait, hold on. Are you arguing you oppose it? And you think it's morally wrong, but you think it should be legal?
I think that women should have the right to decide what they do and have bodily autonomy over their own bodies.
We're not talking about her body. We're talking about...
It is her body. Of course it is. At 9 months, even if it's still inside her, it's still her body. Even if it's a viable baby, it's still her body.
We're talking about the removal of the baby, yes?
The forceful removal of the baby, or...
Forceful.
So she chooses to have that. She should have the right.
The woman says the baby must be removed from my body. Why kill the baby if they're removing it?
I don't think they should do that. I would if they ask,
I don't think they should. What, bro? That's not what we're asking. What you think they should do?
I mean, if they ask me, Lance, should I do this? I would say no, but she should have a right. Yes, of course. It's her body still. That doesn't stop.
So, like, the woman is pregnant, the baby is viable and capable of surviving on its own.
Sure.
And she says before it breaches oxygen, kill it. Do you think that should be allowed?
This is, again, the baby guillotines. This is why I brought that up. But what a weird scenario. This doesn't happen. This is not the real world.
But it does.
Oh, my God.
And if the argument is that it doesn't happen enough for you to care, that's fine. You're allowed to believe that.
Sure.
What I don't understand is it seems like your position is a rather shocked position where you recognize there is something inherently wrong with taking the life of a baby that could survive on its own, but you're also taking the tribal position of women should be allowed to do it anyway.
No. If you were to ask me, Tim, hey, Lance, do you think it's a good idea if this woman who's 9 months pregnant, suddenly she got bored with the pregnancy, she doesn't want to have it anymore, but the baby's viable?
Nobody is saying if it's a good idea.
No, of course not.
Then why should it be allowed?
Because it's still her right. It's still her body.
But
bodily autonomy doesn't stop at my morality. Tim, it's not my choice. Right? It's not my, yes, but that's not my choice.
Why kill it? Why kill it?
That's her choice, not mine.
Why kill the baby?
Ask her. Ask her.
Okay, so my point is simply this. You don't need to be shocked by it. You are allowed to have that moral position. I think most people in America would prescribe that to be, would ascribe evil to that.
Sure, but that's
the idea.
You can ascribe evil to whatever you want. That's up to you. That's your choice.
The idea that you would say
doesn't mean that she should
the
legally be
woman
restricted.
wants the baby removed, and then in the process, instead of letting the baby live, remove it but kill it, right? There's no reason to do that. You can give the baby up for adoption. You can drop the baby off on the doorstep of a post office.
I agree with you. I'm not disputing
that. So why
that.
legalize? Even if it's one, why legalize? You see, this is the craziest thing.
Because her autonomy should not be cut off based on your morality. Because you don't think that idea is good. You don't like it.
But the baby's been removed from her body.
Well, that's if it was removed from her body and it was still viable, right? And that's where the baby guillotines come in, because I don't think this happens. I don't think women on the 9th month get abortions with viable living children and then be like, I don't want it, kill it. I don't think that happens.
I mean, you don't have to think it happens, but statistically it does, because your entire argument is this only happens for reasons of the health of the mother or the health of the unborn child.
I said the statistics show that at the 9th month, if a woman is going to have an abortion, it's typically because it's a medical complication.
It stands with an L in Britain and probably Canada. He's in America, and in America we say guillotine, bitches.
Could either endanger her or the child's life.
And what I am saying is there are doctors who will justify that by saying the medical complication is she is depressed. That is literally one of the reasons given in surveys of women. And another reason that is given is that I know the man who I was going to be with.
Okay, but Seamus, I got to stop you because this is a nebulous argument that doesn't get anywhere. And I can respect the point that if you go to if you try and look this...
By the way, this is one of the reasons why, I'll do a little cringy debate lawyer thing. This is one of the reasons why debate probably is important. Even though we even all say oh yeah, debating is kind of cringe, haha. I just say that to fucking make you fucking lose your trip out of yourself. One of the reasons why debate is important is because at least you get to hear some of the counter arguments to positions that you hold, so that you think through them a little bit more. Because something that's pretty obvious here is Lance is getting, these are pretty softball easy questions. These are kind of things that if you'd ever talked to anybody in your entire life about these issues, this would have come up in an argument. When Lance can't think about how to talk around a 9-month abortion, what it tells me is you've never spoken to anybody in your entire life that has disagreed with your position, because these are like the first questions that would come up. right? Like, imagine somebody comes out on stage and they're like, my position is you should never be allowed to kill somebody. And then somebody's like, what if somebody's about to kill you? And you're like, ooh, that's a really good point. Fuck. I don't know, let me think about it. Like these are I call these level 1 objections. These are things where, like, even if you shot the shit with another friend that was pretty ideologically aligned with you, these would probably come up in ordinary discourse, in normal conversation. And the fact that you're not ready for these, like, level 1 conversation topics, yeah, oof. I think the most charitable read of Lance's argument is that making 9-month abortions illegal is going to have the doctors err against doing them, even when they have sufficient medical reason for doing so. Charlie Bard, but do you understand? He doesn't know that argument, because you are onto something. Here's a little cheat code. If you want to be a radical, and I don't know if you should make these arguments, but if you want to, there actually is a good reason for 9th month abortions, okay? 9th month abortions, 3rd trimester abortions, and I'll give it to you. Here you go, okay? Let's say that we make a ruling, we make a world where we say, hey, the only types of abortions that should be allowed are in the 1st trimester and maybe 2nd trimester. 3rd trimester abortions should only be allowed in times of grave medical danger. Boom, we passed that law. Okay, well, what happens? Woman goes into a hospital, she says, hey, I think I'm having complications, I need to have an abortion ASAP, or there's gonna be huge problems. Doctor goes to look at her and she goes, okay, well, hey, you're in the 8th month of your pregnancy, we're having some huge problems here. There could be a delay, or there could be extra medical screening that you need to do to pass a threshold set by a law, such that women are actually dying now because the doctor has to validate that there's an authentic medical reason in order for her to have that abortion. Or there might be some things that are edge cases where it's like, you know, you could probably deliver, but you've got like a 25 or 30% chance of some fatal complication happening. Are you allowed to kill them at that point? Are you allowed to have an abortion at that point, right? This is your only, in my opinion, this is your only good argument for a 3rd trimester abortion. But Lance doesn't know this argument. I don't know if he's even heard this argument before, because in his circles, he probably just thinks, oh, abortion, her body, her choice, her body, her choice, her body, her choice. And that's all he's ever, he doesn't even know this argument, right? But that, if you wanted to defend a 3rd trimester abortion, that's the only reasonable argument that you could deploy, I think, to defend it.
You're going to find left-wing sources and right-wing sources that will contradict each other. So my question is strictly on the legality of terminating the life of a child. I can sit here and pull up, oh, hey, here's one. Women abort Down syndrome babies late term rather frequently. I think that's wrong. I don't think that someone's life is forfeit because they have Down syndrome. But your argument is that they do.
No, it's not. That's a strong.
No. Your argument is that women have a right to terminate a baby for any reason at any point.
Yes, they should have the bodily autonomy to make that decision.
So what I'm saying is, in the circumstance of Down syndrome, I think it is wrong to terminate a baby's life at 9 months simply for having Down syndrome, but you would agree she is legally allowed to do so.
I think she should be legally allowed to do so. Whether or not I think that's a good idea is irrelevant.
Well,
then it is irrelevant, so why did you just bring it up?
There's the clarification. I think it should be illegal.
Okay.
I think...
So there are limits to how much bodily autonomy women should have.
So yes, right.
So that's your stance.
The pro-choice argument.
See, like Lance, you guys aren't seeing this, okay? But I see this because I see everything. Lance is asking these questions like these are Vampire Slayer questions. So you think that women should have a limit to their bodily autonomy? Yes. Oh. Okay. Okay. And he's like, because in his circles, you ask a question like that, and I'm guessing it shuts down the conversation. Like, oh, fuck. Oh, shit. I would never want to limit a woman's bodily autonomy. Oh, no. Like, in his circles, that's probably, like, the killer question. Anyway, but, like, reasonable people will bite bullets on this. We limit people's autonomy all the time. And most people are okay with limiting a woman's bodily autonomy, even when she's pregnant. Hello? Consumption of alcohol, consumption of drugs, smoking tobacco, doing crazy shit that might endanger your pregnancy. There are tons of ways that we limit a woman's autonomy when she's pregnant. Like,
because you're pro-abortion, right?
Sure.
Pro-choice. Traditionally in this country put limits at around like 15 to 16 weeks, meaning if the baby is dependent upon the body of the mother, then it is the body of the mother and she has final say. If the baby is viable, it can be removed in a process that ends the pregnancy but doesn't end the life of the baby. That's kind of like the compromise where the baby gets to live and the woman no longer has to be pregnant.
Yeah, the thing that sucks is that, like, for as much as he's a loser nowadays, Vosh did a much better job at doing this show, and I don't even know. It's so hard to, why? Hold on, I'm trying to think. Normally Vosh comes off as smug to me, but Lance comes off as more smug. But I don't think he is more smug than Vosh. So why does... Oh, I know why. Vosh comes off as smug to me because Vosh is kind of smug. Lance comes off as worse to me because he's smug and stupid. Vosh isn't stupid. When Vosh did his episode with Charlie Kirk, maybe he comes off a little condescending, but he didn't sound like an idiot. And I think, I think Lance has that issue.
There seems to be this amoral argument where, well, but it just killed the baby anyway, which doesn't make any logical sense. That's the pro-abortion side. So if you go back to the 90s, if you go back to safe, legal, rare, et cetera, if you even look at Tulsi Gabbard in 2020, that's where I'm at. Conservatives are pro-life outright. Seamus would argue abortion in any capacity should be banned entirely. I'm in the traditional Democrat position. But you see, there is a tribal, amoral, illogical position of just let them kill the baby regardless. I don't see any logic there. I don't see how that makes sense morally or ethically or just mathematically.
Right, so you said I'm pro-abortion. What I'm against is forced birth, and I don't think the state should be forcing women to give birth against their will, which is what your position and your position is.
Like, look at all these like little return. Oh, you're in favor of forced birth. You're in favor, like, motherfucker, the baby's coming out of the body one way or another, okay? Whether you evacuate the pregnancy, whether you C-section the out, or whether she delivers naturally, the baby's coming out of the body. Whatever you like, forced birth is the biological realist position. It's coming out, okay? Unless the woman crushes her stomach and reabsorbs the baby back into herself like some weird fucking slime absorption fetish thing, okay? Like.
So I'm against that. I think that's creepy big government shit. I don't think they should be forcing them and turning them into these viable wombs against their will.
I completely agree.
This is rhetorically effective. I think this is rhetorically effective on people on the far left, but I don't know if it's rhetorically effective on people in the center or the right. But who knows? I could be wrong.
I'm against forced birth, just like you. Cool. Except my difference is that if the baby's at 8 months and can survive, they can take the baby out as if they would have an abortion, but not kill it in the process.
If it's a viable womb at 8 months, is it viable?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is viable at 8 months, dude. There have been babies after 20 weeks.
Bro, your whole position is that women have a right to kill the baby even if they end the pregnancy, and there's no logic there.
The logic is that I don't think you agree with forced birth at a point.
How?
How at 8 months? At 8 months, Tim Pool thinks forced birth is fucking cool and poggy.
Stop making up stupid bullshit.
But
dude.
That's what this is.
Bro. Nonsense statement. Because I already said I agree with you. A woman should be able to end her pregnancy whenever she wants. A woman could end her pregnancy whenever she wants. Say it. Tim Pool said a woman can end her pregnancy whenever she wants.
Yeah, but I demand you say it. Giving birth are both ending a pregnancy.
Make up something fake. Tim Pool agrees with forced birth is a false statement. You're lying. I have already said I believe that women have a right to terminate their pregnancy to a certain amount of time.
At 8 months is where you draw the line.
No, I didn't.
Yes, you just said that. If the baby is viable, that she shouldn't have the right to be able to terminate it.
To kill the baby.
Yes.
I said she can end the pregnancy whenever she wants.
And ending the pregnancy can be giving birth or aborting the baby.
Or a C-section that keeps the baby alive.
She has to be forced to give birth against her will in a C-section, but the baby is viable and they give it off.
So how do they remove the baby?
So hold on, either way the baby comes out of her. You're saying that it's more...
So you literally want forced birth. You literally want to force women to give birth against their will.
So can I just interject here?
You're saying they should use the tools to rip apart the body and pull that out. Whereas I'm saying they should just take the baby out.
No, I'm saying she should have the right to decide what happens to her body. That's it.
Okay, but either way the child is coming out. You're making this argument about forced birth. Either way, what is in her body is going to be outside of it. The question is it okay to shove forceps into the skull of the small person who's inside of her and then tear them apart limb by limb to get them out? Or should we say, no, that's not an acceptable way of delivering a baby. You shouldn't kill that unborn child. How is that for either way it comes out of her body? Either way the child comes out of her body. It's not as if there's one scenario where the pregnancy magically disappears and doesn't leave the body.
Let me add, forced birth is a nonsense politics statement.
But in your scenario, she's being forced to give birth against her will. Like she can't
She's
decide.
already pregnant, dude.
I know.
Yes.
We're not talking about forcing her to do anything. She's pregnant.
But then endorse that position.
I did.
Stick by it.
No, I reject there's no such thing as forced birth. They're saying you can't kill that baby.
Let me tell you how fascinating this is.
Because she has the baby inside her.
is so fervent about legalizing the killing of a baby at 9 months that I can sit here and say I think women should be able to terminate their pregnancy whenever they want, but if the baby is viable, there's no reason to kill it.
She has to be forced to give it then. She has to be forced to give birth and then give the baby up, is what you're saying.
Give birth. Define.
Yes. Okay. So that is forced birth, right?
So
she can't decide to terminate it at 8 or 9 months.
Define give birth.
You just said at 8 months if the baby is viable.
I didn't say 8 months. Define give birth. I'm trying to understand what you're saying by forced birth. What does birth mean?
You just said when she is at 8 or 9 months. Okay, so she's at 8 or 9.
I said viable.
Okay, so it's viable. The baby's viable. She should have to give birth to it in some capacity. C-section, whatever.
Define birth, and I can answer your question.
Birth, the removal of a child into the world from a mother's womb.
So how do they do that?
The woman pushes the baby out.
So then what would you call an abortion at 8 months? Is the woman pushing the baby out?
No, it's most likely a medical procedure done by a doctor.
And what is that medical procedure?
An abortion.
Like, but what is that?
What is an abortion?
Yes, like what?
How is it done?
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure how it's done in 8 months. I know earlier on it's usually done with a series of tools. I don't know how it's done in 8 or 9 months.
Okay, so your moral argument is forced birth. I'm trying to understand what your position is. If you don't know how an abortion is done, then are you in favor of forced birth?
Am I in favor of forced? No, I'm against forced birth.
But you think that women should have to expel the baby, right?
It's completely fine for me not to know the medical procedure of how abortion is done to stand up for the rights of a woman's body. I don't need to know how people perform abortions directly. I'm not going to lie here. I'm not going to pretend
removing a baby from a woman's body is birth.
Oh, so you're saying it doesn't count?
No,
it's birth of a different nature.
I don't think you have a definition, and I'm trying to understand what you mean by forced birth, but if you can't define the removal of the baby in a different way, I don't know what you're saying.
Birth, Tim. Like the birth of a child.
So is a C-section a birth?
Sure, yes. It is a form of
wow, God.
Extracting a living child that is viable to live in the real world.
What?
That's how you define birth. Extracting a living child to live in the real world.
No, I would define birth as someone giving birth. They are pushing a baby out of their body.
So I don't think women should be forced to do that, right?
You don't think women should be forced to push babies out of their body?
But the baby is in their body, so it's got to come out somehow.
So you're going to take it out with a C-section?
No, I don't know. Okay. But I'm trying to figure out what you mean by this.
So that would be forced birth. So she's forced to give and make a viable child, live in the real world.
I mean, when you're pregnant, the baby.
Wouldn't a C-section be birth? Yeah, I would say so. Giving birth is like a colloquial term. We'd probably say like C-section, normal delivery, anything that involves like the baby coming to your body that's not like killing the baby. We'd probably say, roughly speaking, is like giving birth, right?
It's going to come out of you at some point.
That's the
Either
point.
we rip
no
it
matter
apart
what
or
happens,
you give birth
the baby
naturally.
is coming out of the woman, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So there's no being in favor of that or not. It happens. Period.
Yes.
Okay. So what's your point?
What's my point?
Am I in favor of a natural process?
People do this all the time when I'm having debates where I'll ask myself, okay, so what do you mean by that?
And they're only beneficial if both go into it with good faith.
What do I mean by that?
Their position, otherwise it's brainless talking points and trying to score points in the debate.
Good one. When people do that thing where they like ask you the same question again, like you're like, what do you mean by killing? It's like, what do I mean by killing? When people do that, it drives me crazy because it feels like they're just stalling for time and they know they have like no good response to what I'm saying. It absolutely drives me crazy.
Process by which a woman has to have a baby removed from her no matter what anyone says or does?
Your point is that at 8 or 9 months, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Tim.
You are wrong. Yes, I'll stop you right there because when you keep saying 8 or 9 months, that's not what I said over and over and over again.
Viability is after 6 months.
Viability is.
Okay, that means that there's more than a 50% chance of
You're also wrong. It's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby
it's not 6 months.
So as soon as the baby is viable, Tim, as soon as the baby is viable, then it's okay for the woman, even if she doesn't want to have it anymore for whatever reason, she should have to be forced to have it extracted from her. And then live. Is that correct? Is that your position?
Well, it's not forcing the woman to have a baby live if the baby's already alive. You see what I'm saying? Like, you
right.
can,
so you're okay. So we're talking about semantics.
I got a compromise for you. I got a compromise for you. We'll tell the mother we killed it, but we'll sneak it off and give it to someone else. Does that work for you?
No, because I still think she should have autonomy. She should have the right to do it if she wants to. Of course.
She should kill the baby after it's already born?
I don't want her to kill a baby. I want her to have.
Why do you keep saying it?
Because I want her to have the ability to choose. That's different, and that is a fundamental part of this.
The baby's out of her body, right?
Forcibly. In your scenario.
No. Let's say 24 weeks. The woman goes to the doctor and says, I want this baby out of me. And
what if she says, I don't want to have this baby?
I don't want to have this baby. Okay. And the doctor says, I will remove it.
Okay.
Uh-oh, the baby's alive. What do we do?
So you forced her to give birth?
No. She said, doctor, I'd like an abortion. He says, you got it. Step right up.
He's lying to her.
No. He does the abortion and it fails. And
an abortion is terminating a pregnancy. So there's no such thing as a trick abortion. You can't trick.
They're called failed abortions.
Failed abortions, where doctors trick women into taking their babies out?
No. So when they perform the abortion, as Seamus explained, they stick metal tools into the brain, scramble it up, and rip its body parts apart, and then pull it out chunk by chunk.
Okay.
When the babies are smaller, sometimes they pull them out, but the babies don't die; they survive, right? So my question is, in the instance of a failed abortion, what should be done?
A failed abortion being that the child is living, it's outside of the mother.
Yeah.
At that point, you cannot kill that child. That would be murder.
Oh, okay.
Oh my God.
Agreed
Jesus.
on that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So then, where does the mother's choice come in to kill?
Before that procedure takes place.
So
she has a choice to choose what she wants to have done with her body. If she goes to a doctor and the doctor's like, I'm going to perform an abortion, which the assumption would be that I'm about to terminate the child, but then he just secretly sneaks the child out of there, that's not performing an abortion. You're just being deceptive.
Yeah, and the doctor should go to prison if they did something like that, in my opinion.
I think he should go to prison if he performed an abortion.
Snap.
Yeah.
I heard that. Not surprised.
Opposite perspective.
So there's also something that none of us know, because I don't think any of us are medical doctors, the difference on the physiology of the female body giving a 9-month abortion, having that happen, or the actual birthing process, whether by C-section or natural birth. It might have vastly different consequences on the female body. So that's something to take into account.
So wait. Remember the Born Alive Act?
Yes.
That was a Republican position, wasn't it? What was that?
Yeah, so there have been a couple of different Born Alive Acts in different years, but what they basically say is that if the abortion fails, it is not legal to kill the child.
Wasn't that Republicans were trying to pass a law?
Republicans were trying to pass that. That was one of the only things Obama voted on in the Senate. He voted against it.
Obama voted against it. But you would be in favor of that.
In favor of what?
The Born Alive Act.
I'm not completely familiar with it, so I'd have to read
if an
up on it
infant is
first.
born alive after an attempted abortion, it has the same protection of law and degree as a newborn.
Yeah, I would be okay with that, because at that point it's a human. If you're killing a person that is alive outside of a womb, then that's murder, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Can I ask you, this is not a gotcha.
We agree on that. That's great.
I want to ask in good faith. So,
yeah, of course.
Do you believe that the moment after the child is outside of the birth canal, that they are now endowed with human rights?
Yes.
However, when they are inside of the mother, literally anything you do to them is acceptable because they're inside of the mother.
Oh, no, I don't think anything is acceptable, but I think the mother should still have the choice, ultimate authority over what happens to her body.
But there's a child inside of her body,
Hold on.
and not
What
her.
about meth?
Like, should she be allowed to do meth?
Yeah.
I think if someone is doing meth while they're pregnant, that it is completely acceptable for something like, I don't know what the name